it might be the case that prior to, and I'm going to give you a specific example now. Let's say that this big divide, just for visual purposes, represents the scientific enlightenment. Right? So we have scientific enlightenment, and let's just say, arguably, we're talking about pre-17th, post-17th century, roughly, right? Pre-17th, post-17th century. Pre-17th century, there was no conception of race, right? Race doesn't exist. Actually, I'll do it like this. So, no race concept. I'm just saying arguably. Post-17th century, race concept. Right? If, historically speaking, there is a non-existence of this idea of race, and then there is the existence of this idea of race, and we end up adopting this concept. It's going to be a huge shift, obviously. A paradigm is what it's called, right? There's a huge paradigmatic shift that's required in order for us as a globe or nations to shift from an idea where there isn't this concept of race to there being a concept of race. And the question is, how do we do that? Well, unfortunately, we did it through science, right? Science was the conduit with which we went from the absence of the concept of race to the concept of race. The funny thing about it, it's also through science now, if we extend this even further, right? So we'll put today. It's also the case that it's also the case that we go from no concept of race, to a concept of race, to now no concept of race, right? So there isn't, we are, within academia, scientists, the general population, a lot of people still believe in, and I don't know why our census still does this, but it doesn't matter. Scientists, social scientists, hard scientists know that the notion of race is nonsensical. Race does not exist. There is no such thing as race. It's been scientifically, unequivocally disproven. The very thing that created the notion of race is the very thing that helped us get rid of the notion of race, right? So there wasn't a concept of race prior to the 17th century. Because of scientific enlightenment, the notion of race was introduced. And also because of science, the notion of race was eradicated. So we got rid of the notion of race. So you can see a pattern. No concept, concept, no concept. And this is where we are today. The question is, how did we get rid of this notion of race? And this is post-colonialism, in part, and postmodernism. Right? It was through, and many other things, but through primarily post-colonialism, postmodernism, advances in scientific knowledge, scientific understanding, that we were able to get rid of this notion of race, so that the concept of race came as a consequence of scientific enlightenment, but it's because of science that we were able to eradicate the notion of race. Right? So you can see, in a sense, there is this historical flip-flopping, right? This historical flip-flopping with respect to the idea of race. So the question then becomes, what do you think about race? Right? What do I think about race? And it's very hard to address. Why? Because like the candidate who says he's pro-choice and then pro-life, you don't know what to make of the candidate's belief. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't, maybe she is, maybe she isn't. I don't really know. With respect to race, because this discourse in race has always been filtered through either very, very technical, theoretical notions or very, very technical scientific proof, the average person doesn't know what to make of race. I don't know. Within my lifetime, they said that race exists. I remember what happened because of race. I couldn't drink with these people. I couldn't sit with these people. Now, within my lifetime, they're telling me that all the stuff that I was told as a little kid was a lie. It's hard for people to make sense of that, right? Rightfully so. Rightfully so, right? If I was told as a child that black people can infect me and I shouldn't be eating with them and I shouldn't be sleeping with them and I shouldn't be having kids with them, and if you have kids with them, then the kids are going to grow up to be sterile and they're going to grow up to be ridiculously stupid, then I believe that as a child, you know, and in my lifetime, all of that's debunked. That's conceptually hard. That flip-flopping has caused, within me, a complete schism. So what ends up happening is you have people who feverishly defend what they were taught, and people who feverishly try to critique that, when no one's really discussing, listen, I understand why it is you feel the way you feel, because if I were taught that as a kid, I'd probably have the same racist ideologies and beliefs that exist today. It is a discourse that needs to happen, right? So this idea of flip-flopping, as I said, ontologically speaking, would be a very, very interesting, very interesting analysis. Obviously, I'm not going to go through too much more. I think that explains what I wanted to do in this section. So that concludes this part 1.1 of the analysis. I will be continuing with my analysis of theories in the next installment. With that being said, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch my videos. I'm Dr. Jason J. Campbell. Have a good day.